Warning, the following episode of The Bone Garden contains mature language and graphic descriptions. This episode may not be suitable for everybody. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Hello there, freaky friends. It's your spooky girl, Kate, and you are listening to episode number 2 of the Bone Garden podcast. If you've listened to us before, hi, welcome back. I hope you've been doing well and staying safe. If you are new here, though, hello. My name is Kate. I'm a Massachusetts native, and I'm a lifelong paranormal and true crime enthusiast. And I'm on this weird fucking journey of learning all sorts of creepy, freaky things, and you are more than welcome to come with me. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to take a quick second and thank everybody that has supported me so far. I know I'm only into the second episode right now, but the fact that so many of my friends and just people that I've met in passing have just rallied around me, and they've been nothing but kind and warm and everything. I love you all so fucking much. Okay, really quick story time. It's not going to be a 16-minute conversation with myself like in the pilot. But the night that I found out that my show was live, because the way that it works through Apple is that you submit your show, you fill out like all the paperwork, and then they're like, yeah, it'll be up in maybe a day or maybe a week. It really depends. So I thought that it was going to be a lot longer than it was. So I was on the phone with some of my friends, and I was checking my email, and I got the congratulations, your show is now live on Apple Podcasts. And my first response was to scream. And then I promptly started crying. If you listen to the pilot episode, I touch on it a little bit. I've wanted to do this show for years, and the fact that I finally, if I wanted to, I can look myself up on Apple Podcasts. I can hear myself talking, and it is so surreal to me, but it's just, I understand that this podcast is a lot of work, and I'm not saying that it's not, but the fact that I'm doing it is so amazing, and the fact that I have so many people that care and that seem to love it so far. One of my friends who was always poking fun at me, he was like, I listened to your show and my heart dropped out of my asshole. And I was like, what? And he was like, I loved it. And I'm so blessed on so many levels to have this platform to talk about what I care about, first of all, and having this family of people that have been nothing but loving and supporting, and I'm gonna fucking cry. I love you all. I love every part of our friendship. I've loved every part of this show so far. So just thank you. That's all I'm going to say is just thank you. But anyway, enough of all of that gushy shit. We are going to jump into this week's topic. And the way that we're going to do it is kind of weird. We're going to start at the end, and then we're going to go to the beginning and then lead to the end. It's like a story sandwich. I know that it sounds kind of crazy, but it will make sense, I promise. So turn on your nightlight and strap in, because here we go. It's the evening of July 26th, 2015 in St. Petersburg, Russia, and a young couple is out for a walk with their dog at Kuprinsky Prud, a neighborhood park located at 10 Dimitrov Street. As the couple is walking through the park, their dog begins to act totally out of character, and the odd behavior only seems to get worse as they approach the pond at the center of the park. The dog seems very interested in something on the bank of the pond, pulling at its leash to get closer. The couple finally makes out what their dog is reacting to, a bundled up plastic sheet. Thinking that the bundle is just discarded trash, the couple unwraps the sheet, only to be met with the horror within. This was not the work of a local litter bug. This was a dismembered human torso. The couple calls the police, and they quickly go to work trying to narrow down who the victim could be. It seems impossible at first, with no hands to get fingerprints and no head for dental records or facial features. So the police do the next best thing. They ask around, seeing if anybody has gone missing recently. On July 27th, and with the help of Good Samaritans, they identify the torso as belonging to Valentina Yulanova, a local elderly woman. Police arrive at Valentina's apartment, and they are greeted by a small-statured, red-headed woman. She's kind, she's polite, and she's compliant. She introduces herself as Tamara, Valentina's roommate. As police enter the apartment, they notice traces of blood in the kitchen, small droplets and smears, but nothing that couldn't be explained. The police press Tamara, asking to see the bathroom, and they are greeted with a similar scene. Blood splatter, smears. But the golden goose for St. Petersburg police is the shower curtain, or lack thereof. It is missing from the bathroom, having been ripped off of the rings in a hurry. When Tamara is taken into custody, she confesses to the murder of her roommate Valentina Yulanova, but Valentina's murder is just the tip of the iceberg. Tamara claims that she has been murdering and dismembering her roommates for nearly 2 decades. This is the story of Tamara Samsonova, the Granny Ripper. So Tamara Samsonova was born Tamara Mitrofanova on February 5th, 1947 in Uzur, USSR. Now, I couldn't find much information about Tamara's personal childhood, but I do know that she was born in the middle of the Soviet famine. The Soviet famine was a severe drought in 1946 that led to a massive famine from 1946 to the winter of 1947. Now, the drought, combined with the government's increasingly strict qualifiers for food ration cards and the increase in food prices, actually resulted in an estimated 900,000 people dying of starvation. During the famine, kind of similar to Ukraine's Holodomor, people would have resorted to eating whatever they could find. Things like scraps of bread, bits of grass. Some people even resorted to cannibalism just to stay alive. It can also be speculated that Tamara's father, if he was still around, was drafted into the Cold War to serve his country. Again, just speculation, but regardless, Tamara was born into a dog-eat-dog world, and she just grew up in pure destitution. One of her former classmates named Anna claimed that one day Tamara told her that she'd murdered her own mother, but that was never confirmed by authorities. Anna also mentioned to authorities that Samsonova actually threatened that if Anna told anybody that Tamara had killed her mom, that she would kill Anna, chop her up into pieces, and feed her to the dogs. So, Tamara moved to Moscow in the late 1960s after finishing high school, and when she was in Moscow, she attended the Moscow State Linguistic University before she moved to St. Petersburg and met her future husband, Alexei Samsonova. So the two of them move into an apartment complex together at 4 Dimitrov Street, and they both just started going to work. Alexei worked as a mechanic, and Tamara's working history was a little bit on and off. She started working mostly for tourism and travel agencies, and eventually ended up working at the Belmont Grand Hotel. The Belmont Grand Hotel in St. Petersburg is absolutely stunning. Little fun fact for you, actually, is that the Belmont Grand Hotel in St. Petersburg was actually featured in the 1995 James Bond movie GoldenEye. It is amazing. I looked up pictures and I couldn't believe that this place actually exists. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. So this hotel would attract tons of high-end visitors, people like Elton John, Peter Tchaikovsky, and even Bill Clinton. But regardless, Tamara ended up retiring in the year 2000 at the age of 53, and when she retired, she'd actually only worked a total of about 16 years. But as we'll learn soon enough, retirement was just the beginning for Tamara Samsonova. So Tamara retires, and it seems like she just wants to kick back and relax, doing peaceful things that old ladies like to do, like knitting or macrame. And Tamara got just what she wanted. She got all that peace and quiet because shortly after she retired in the year 2000, her husband disappears. Tamara reported her husband's disappearance to the police, and she was pushing and begging them to find him. Tamara speculated that Alexei may have just run off with another woman, which would make sense for some marriages or relationships, but the two of them, by that time, had been married for about 30 years. The police searched tirelessly for Alexei, but he was never seen again. It's thought that Alexei was actually Tamara's first victim, but that theory has never been substantiated. Nobody's heard or seen Alexei Samsonova since. Now, life after Alexei got a little bit weirder. According to one of Tamara's neighbors named Maria Kravchenko, Samsonova just kept getting stranger. Kravchenko claimed that Samsonova was very proud of her appearance even in her older age, and that she would sit on her balcony partially nude and invite all sorts of men inside. Kravchenko told police that men would come and go throughout the day, but, maybe it's just a fellow visitor. Nothing wrong with that, but maybe she was drawing victims in, and as we'll see, that might have been the case. Kravchenko would also go on to tell authorities about a string of weird behaviors from Samsonova, saying, quote, "It was obvious Tamara was a bit strange. For example, she would go out barefoot and in a dressing gown, even in the winter. She liked to go out and buy food at night because she said that was when she liked to eat. She thought that people came into her flat when she was out and cut up her clothes, but when I suggested calling the police, she panicked and said that they wouldn't help. She would chat about normal things, and then a minute later would switch to sounding crazy." Now, I know that Tamara seemed weird enough. Her husband disappeared. She would go out onto her balcony, partially nude, invite people inside day in and day out. She'd wear dressing gowns in the dead of winter, go out grocery shopping in the middle of the night. That sounds weird enough. But the weirdest thing was her diary. Samsonova's diary, which was later discovered by the police, detailed her fascination and love for Russian serial killer Andrei Chikatilo, who was also called the Butcher of Rostov. Andrei Chikatilo, who we'll definitely cover in a future episode, he was thought to have murdered, sexually assaulted, and cannibalized more than 50 people for his own sexual gratification. However, Samsonova's fascination with him didn't stop at his creepy, beady, lifeless eyes. She would go on to use him as inspiration for her own future murders. Tamara was also an avid reader, and she would spend a lot of free time with her nose in a book. She adored books about the occult, including dark fiction, and her apartment also allegedly had a couple of spell books in it, so it can definitely be theorized that she was dabbling in some kind of ritual or black magic. Now, quick sidebar, don't get me wrong here, okay? There is nothing wrong with reading books about the occult or dabbling in witchcraft. Having unorthodox interests do not make you a serial killer. I personally love creepy books. I mean, hi, I'm doing this podcast, and a lot of my closest friends are actually practicing witches, but just because I enjoy reading about the occult, that doesn't mean I'm gonna, I don't know, go chopping people up or make weird soup out of people's heads, which, yes, that is a thing that she did, and we're going to get into it, so buckle the fuck up. Now, Tamara was allegedly suffering from schizophrenia, and she was taking medication to treat it, and it was later confirmed that she'd been admitted to a psychiatric hospital 3 separate times for additional treatment and therapy. Now, just a little note off of that as well, is I do want to say that having mental illness or a psychological disorder is not a free pass to treat anybody horribly or murder anybody or chop them up or do any of this awful shit. And if you feel like you personally need help with any mental illnesses, please contact somebody. I personally struggle with anxiety and depression all the time, so make sure that you have a network of friends to reach out to because you are not alone. If you have to, you can contact me personally. I will talk to you. I will be your buddy. That's what this is all about. So, anyway, moving forward. Even though Samsonova claimed that she'd killed roughly a dozen people, there are only a few that we can definitely confirm, and we're going to go through those ones now. Our first victim is Vladimir number 1. Tamara decides that she's lonely after Alexei disappears, so she decides that she's going to get herself a roommate to help give her some company and pay the bills. In 2001, a man named Vladimir moves into her apartment with her. Vladimir and Tamara became pretty good friends, and their relationship actually blossomed into something more. But things started getting rocky between the two of them, and eventually Vladimir broke things off and wanted to move out. Vladimir disappears, only to be found by police years later as hospital records show that he checked himself in because he was displaying symptoms that were indicative of poisoning. But Vladimir number 1 lived, and he was one of the lucky ones. The next victim that we're going to touch on was not so fortunate. So the next of Tamara's victims was a man named Sergei Potinin. In 2003, Tamara welcomed Sergei as her next roommate. Sergei was in his early 40s at the time and was from a town called Norilsk, which is north of St. Petersburg. Everything was fine at first, but just like Vladimir number 1, eventually Sergei got tired of Tamara's antics. She was a very strict woman and wanted her home to be run exactly how she wanted it. No ifs, no buts, no coconuts. It's just, this is my ship, this is how it goes. According to other residents in the apartment complex, Tamara had an awful attitude, and she was just an all-around nightmare to be near. She would lash out at people for no reason. She would yell, cuss, throw and slam things. And then, one day, Sergei Potinin disappears. Other residents believe that Sergei had just gotten to a breaking point and moved out, heading back to his hometown or just finding another place to live in St. Petersburg. But he was gone. Now on to our third victim, who's a man that I just called Vladimir number 2. And he is unidentified. Now the only reason that we know about Vladimir number 2 is because of Tamara's diary. Tamara's diary detailed a grisly murder of another roommate nicknamed Volodya, which is a Russian nickname for Vladimir. And she wrote, quote, "I killed my tenant Volodya, cut him to pieces in the bathroom with a knife, put the pieces of his body into plastic bags, and threw them away in different parts of the Fruzensky district. His body has never been found, and he has never been positively identified." So Vladimir number 2 is just a mystery. Potentially just a tale from Tamara's diary, but it could be more. Now, the last known victim that we have for Tamara was a man by the name of Alexander Barishev. Now, he only stayed with Tamara for a week. And again, the only reason that we know about Alexander is from Tamara's own words. Now, Tamara confessed to the murder of Alexander Barishev to police. She detailed the grisly murder, only to quickly just retract the statement. She told police that she was just kidding and that she had nothing to do with his disappearance. Well, Tamara continued to welcome more roommates into her home over the years, and eventually they all got sick of her and quote-unquote left. This pattern of coming and going continued until 2015, when Valentina Ulanova came into the picture. So it's March of 2015, and Tamara's apartment complex was under renovations, and a friend of hers actually introduced her to Valentina Nikolaevna Ulanova, an ailing 79-year-old woman. Now, by all accounts, Valentina was a wonderful woman. She was very sweet. And Valentina actually offered to give Tamara a place to live while the complex was being renovated, and Tamara accepted. So she moves in with Valentina, giving her money toward bills, as well as just helping out with regular tasks around the house. Being almost 80 years old, things were really difficult for Valentina, and she really appreciated the extra set of hands. So Tamara gets pretty cozy in Valentina's apartment, and after her apartment was renovated, she decided that she just didn't want to move back home. Valentina kept pressing and asking Tamara to move out. She wanted her own place again, and Tamara refused. Now, Tamara's stubbornness and rotten attitude really started to wear Valentina down, and her patience was just non-existent. On the other hand, Tamara was growing restless too, and one final argument over whose turn it was to wash the dishes was the final straw. On July 14th, 2015, Tamara took a trip to a local pharmacy to pick up phenazepam, which is a medication used to treat things like schizophrenia, anxiety, and sleep disorders. And the real kicker is that Tamara didn't have a prescription, but the pharmacist probably didn't think anything of it. It's just a sweet old lady. What harm could this do? So she purchases this prescription, and as she's heading back to the apartment that she shared with Valentina, she swung by a restaurant and picked up a to-go order for something called an Olivier salad. Olivier salad is made with boiled potatoes, eggs, vegetables, pickles, and usually a protein like diced chicken or pork with mayo. So it's kind of like an egg salad or a potato salad, but a couple little extra things. A couple of bad extra things. So the real kicker in all of this was that Olivier salad was Valentina's favorite food. So it appeared on the surface that Tamara was just trying to make amends with her roommate by bringing her favorite dish. So Tamara brings the salad and the prescription home, and then she crushes up a handful of phenazepam and mixes it into the salad before giving it to Valentina as a peace offering. Now, overdosing on phenazepam can put somebody into a very heavy sleep, And in some cases, a person can actually slip into a coma and die. But death would have been a blessing for Valentina, because what Tamara had in mind was much, much worse. Now, this next part is really, really rough, so skip ahead a couple minutes if you don't want to hear it, but it's gonna get gnarly. So, Tamara later finds Valentina unconscious, and she grabs a hacksaw that she borrowed from her neighbor, Maria Kravchenko. That's right, a fucking hacksaw. Again, this is going to get really nasty, so deep breath. So she takes this hacksaw and she cuts Valentina's arms and legs off before using kitchen knives to disembowel her and chop Valentina's body into pieces. After Valentina was dismembered, Tamara stuffed her body into garbage bags. You can actually go to YouTube and you can see the CCTV footage from Valentina's apartment complex. The CCTV footage from the hallway of the apartment complex shows Tamara bringing out the trash one night, and she's making multiple trips lugging several large trash bags outside. Now, remember, Tamara's a very small woman, so multiple trips, very, very heavy. It's a lot of effort. Now, watching this footage, I watched it probably about 4 or 5 times. And it's not because it shows anything gross. It's the fact that it's so harrowing. Like, whenever you see footage from anybody, like, what was his name? The Leaf Killer, Matthew, whatever his last name is. Well, we're going to cover him as well. But you can see him in Walmart, and it's just so casual. And you would think nothing of it if you just passed him. And you don't know what he's actually doing. And the same applies for Tamara. Watching this footage, you would think that there's nothing going on, that everything is normal, and that could not be farther from the truth. But anyway, so Tamara is bringing down these big trash bags full of her roommate's dismembered body, and the last item that Tamara brings downstairs is a pot, a soup pot with a lid on it. Now, the pot didn't have anything scary in it. It was just a pot that had old soup in it that it was so rancid that Tamara was just going to throw the whole pot away. So she brought it to the curb for the garbage men. I'm obviously kidding, because that pot had Valentina's severed fucking head inside. Like, okay. So we can dissect this a little bit, pun intended. First of all, yeah, she could have bought more hefty trash bags. That's not a big deal. They're like $3 at like Walmart. But as we dive into it more, we're going to realize that it wasn't because she ran out of bags. I'll tell you that right now. It gets even grosser. So she brings the pot outside. She disappears into the night. And that is the last time anybody saw Valentina not torso-ified. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because when I researched this, I was like, this is not fucking real. Like, are you serious right now? And it gets worse. That, I think, is going to be the motto of today's episode, is it gets worse. And it gets worse because we're going to learn why Tamara actually stayed with Valentina. And it was not because her apartment was being renovated. The renovations were just an excuse to move in with Valentina. Now, it's scary, but it's also sad in the fact that Tamara mentioned that moving in with Valentina actually calmed her impulses, and for a while her schizophrenia seemed to be simmering down until Valentina asked her to move out, at which point Tamara started ramping up again. She was getting anxious and she snapped. Tamara also told police that the reason that she put Valentina's head into the pot was to boil it down and make identifying her impossible, which, yeah, it holds up in theory, but the fact that Tamara was also disemboweling her victims, and she also wrote about it in her diary, that she was trying pieces of her victims. She would cook the lungs, she would take pieces of flesh from, like, maybe, like, the legs or the stomach. So, yeah, in theory, Tamara was trying to destroy evidence, but it could have actually been soup. By the way, Kravchenko, who had loaned the hacksaw to Samsonova, she loaned it to Samsonova under the guise that Tamara was doing renovations. And Samsonova also claimed time and time again that she'd given Maria her hacksaw back. But Maria counterclaimed, saying that the hacksaw had been missing for 10 fucking years. 10 years. First of all, what? Like, you're missing your hacksaw. Yeah, that sucks. But you also know that this woman is unhinged and that she's had erratic behavior, concerning behavior. She was yelling at people and cussing and throwing things and acting violent. And you're like, no, it's fine that, I don't have my hacksaw anymore. Go to Home Depot, buy yourself a new hacksaw, and then call the fucking cops. I mean, I'm not trying to blame Maria whatsoever. You have no way of knowing that this would have happened. But dear God, 10 years and you're missing a hacksaw. I couldn't imagine the guilt of loaning somebody something that they then used to go dismember a fucking human being. But regardless, now we are back to the beginning of the episode with Tamara Samsonova in police custody. Meanwhile, police are searching Tamara's apartment, and they find a collection of bizarre items, such as the dark fiction books, the occult books, and her diary. And her diary was very methodically written. Now, Tamara was a very organized woman, and she would write out all sorts of things in her diary, like what she ate, how she was feeling, who she killed and how she killed them, like normal stuff. Tamara's diary also detailed that fascination with cannibalism that she now shared with Andre Chikatilo. And she also claimed both in the diary and to officials that she would eat various body parts and portions of organs before she dumped the bodies. So it was confirmed that Tamara Samsonova was eating parts of her victims. Now, if that weren't incriminating enough, Tamara's diary became the smoking fucking gun for bringing her to trial. So now we're going to jump forward a few days. We are now at July 29th, 2015, where Tamara Samsonova appeared for her first hearing at the Frunze District Court in St. Petersburg. Now, Tamara seemed very calm, and she was actually really photogenic. She would interact with the press and paparazzi by doing things like blowing kisses to the photographers behind bulletproof glass, waving to people. She seemed like she was enjoying it, but we'll also find soon enough that she was just relieved. So at the end of the hearing, the judge asked Samsonova, quote, "I'm asked to arrest you. What do you think?" And she replied, quote, "You decide, Your Honor. After all, I am guilty and I deserve a punishment." Samsonova was later brought in for a psychiatric evaluation, and she was then deemed a danger to herself and society, as well as being mentally unfit to stand trial. The judge determined that she would be placed in a specialized psychiatric institution while her case was being investigated. And when she was told that, she started clapping. Samsonova was very compliant with authorities, even demonstrating how she actually chopped up Valentina and telling police that she had to hide Valentina's hips, legs, and feet in the backyard of the complex because they were too heavy for Tamara to move any further. As far as Valentina's head goes, she has never revealed the location of her head. There's something that's just so fucking disgusting about killers that just refuse to tell authorities where they've put a victim's head. Like, how fucking dare you? Like, I understand that Tamara was suffering from a mental illness, but again, like I mentioned earlier, that is not an excuse for you to hurt people. And the thing about somebody's head is the fact that your head is your identity. And a lot of killers, whether they are, whether you're mentally fit, whether you're mentally unfit, it's the fact that your head is who you are. And for a lot of killers, there's a whole science behind when a killer takes a victim, how they do it. the way that the body is positioned, the way that the body is disposed of. And for a lot of killers, they will do something to either remove the head, literally, or obscuring it with like a sheet, a pillow. Because for those people, when you kill somebody, if you don't see a head, it's not really a person. But that's obviously not the fucking case. These victims, Tamara's victims, the victims of killers that we'll cover in the future, these were not just tallies. This was somebody's son. This was somebody's daughter, their mother, their grandfather. It was a human being. And I understand wholeheartedly that Tamara was suffering heavily, very heavily. I couldn't imagine the mental anguish that she was going through. But there's just something that makes me personally sick when you don't tell somebody where their mother's fucking head is. Like, my goodness. Anyway, Tamara Samsonova is currently under investigation for at least 11 murders, but the number could be closer to 20. However, most of the alleged murders don't have enough evidence or really a body to positively identify them for those allegations to stand up in court. In December of 2015, Tamara Samsonova was sent to be held in the Kazan Psychiatric Hospital in Kazan, which is the 5th largest city in Russia. Now, the Kazan Psychiatric Hospital is thought to be like a dumping ground for the worst of the worst. And later, in 2017, Tamara Samsonova was sentenced to spend her life in the Kazan Psychiatric Hospital. When she was interviewed about her sentencing, Samsonova was quoted as saying, "I have nowhere else to live. I'm a very old person, and I put the whole matter to rest deliberately. I have thought 77 times about it, and then decided that I must be in prison. I will die there, and the state will probably bury me." End quote. Now, there can be a lot said about this case. First of all, to my knowledge, it is still ongoing. They are still looking for victims. They are still trying to piece things together using Tamara's diary. And I also want to say that I am not a criminal psychologist. I am just a girl from Massachusetts that loves creepy stuff. So, just my impression of this case, going off of what I understand from Tamara Samsonova's case, is that she very clearly wanted to be caught. She wanted the police to link Valentina's murder back to her. The hard reality for a lot of people suffering from mental illness, criminal or otherwise, is you get to a point that is so unbelievably dark and you are tired of fighting that darkness. And you're like, well, if I can't help myself, I need to be put in a place where I don't have to worry about hurting other people. Now, some serial killers completely lack that empathy. They feel nothing toward their victims. Dennis Rader, who is also known as BTK, if you listen to his interviews, he doesn't give a shit about all of the people that he's hurt. Now, that's not to say that just because you don't express remorse verbally, that doesn't mean that you don't care. But for somebody like Tamara, I feel like, yeah, if her claims are true and she has been murdering people for nearly 2 decades and that she's killed more than a dozen people, she must have been so tired of being in a situation where she thought that she was doing better, and then that impulse kicks in and she's like, I need to fuel this. And so I definitely feel like this was done intentionally. I mean, at the expense of a human being, absolutely not. That is not okay. But she left so many loose ends. The park, Kuprinsky Prud, that is at 10 Dimitrov Street, and Tamara's actual apartment complex was at 4 Dimitrov Street. So she disposed of this body right near her house. She she was sloppy and she was caught on camera, you have to have known that there were cameras in that apartment. There is no way that you live with somebody and you walk through that hallway probably on a daily basis and you don't see those cameras. So it is my opinion, and I'm sure the opinion of other people as well, that Tamara Samsonova killing Valentina was done so haphazardly so that she could be detained, because she seemed so relieved in court when she was sentenced to be detained, because she didn't know what else to do. And that honestly breaks my heart. It truly does, is that there are so many people out there that struggle with mental illness. Granted, the vast majority do not go on to kill people and eat them and make soups out of their heads. But there are so many people struggling that do not know what to do. And I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second and reiterate what I said earlier. If you are struggling with mental illness of any kind and you feel like there is nowhere for you to go, please talk to a friend. Talk to somebody in the supermarket. I had a really bad day one time and I was under so much stress and I didn't know what to do, and I was in a Trader Joe's. a Trader Joe's. I was buying chicken soup dumplings because I love those. And my cashier was scanning everything and she was like, "Oh, how has your day been?" And I was like, "It has not been okay." Because I was going through a really bad patch mentally. My mental health was not good. And I just told her, I was like, "I am not feeling okay today." And she was like, "It is okay to not be okay." And I thanked her. I paid for my things. I brought my shopping cart to my car and I put everything in there. I got in the car and I cried. Because sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. So all of that to say, if you feel like you need somebody to talk to literally anybody. If you have to, write it down on a piece of paper. That's fine too. And if you are really desperate, absolutely email me. Reach out to me on Facebook. Tweet me at Twitter. That is fine. Just know that if you are suffering in any capacity and you are worried that you're going to hurt somebody, you're going to hurt yourself, reach out, because truly you are not alone. But now that we've gotten through fucking air fresh. This air fresher has been quiet this entire recording, and now you're doing it. Okay, well, in case you were wondering how my air freshener is doing, it's doing great. But anyway, I think that just about sums up the case of Tamara Samsonova for today. I realize that this episode isn't as long as my last one, but it's just because this is still an ongoing investigation. There isn't a lot of information at the moment. But either way, I so appreciate your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today. If you have recommendations for future shows, please feel free to email me. The podcast email is thebonegardenpodcast@gmail.com. No special characters, no numbers or anything like that. If you have any creepy personal stories, email those to me too, and I would love to do some listener stories episodes in the future. Like I said earlier, you can also find us on Facebook, because we got the social medias now. So if you go to Facebook, you're going to type in the Bone Garden Podcast, and there's the page. And I know there's not a whole lot going on right now, but that is where I'm going to be the absolutely most active. You can also find us on Twitter too. You can just type into the search bar, the Bone Garden Podcast, and I should pop up. Or you can use the Twitter handle Bone Garden Pod with an underscore between each word. Now, I post pictures from every single episode on Facebook and Twitter, and following social media is really just the best way to stay in the loop. I'd also totally appreciate it if you wouldn't mind giving me a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps to boost the show, and it also helps other people to find the show as well. As always, I'd also like to give a very special thank you to my friend Pippin for doing the artwork for the show. Follow them on Twitter at Archer Kasai. It's ARCHERKASAI. Their commissions are open, so feel free to reach out if you need any artwork done. But that just about does it for me today. I'm gonna go watch videos of cute puppies or something. I love you all so much. Remember to stay safe, be kind to each other, and stay the fuck away from the Granny Ripper. Bye, guys!